These are the winning trees from last year's U.S. National Bonsai and Penjing Championships. And although they are excellent examples of bonsai, none of them would have won under most other judging criteria. You heard that right. These trees went against the grain, so to speak, and defied convention to claim their victories. So why did they win? Why were these particular judges enticed by these trees? What made them tick? We gonna take a look at each of the three winning trees and see what elements they contain that cause such a stir. But more importantly, we're going to discuss how you can apply these concepts to your own bonsai so that you can get an idea of how to wow a judge. First, let's talk about why these criteria matter. As bonsai artists, we spend countless hours striving to make our trees beautiful. But beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And when it comes to judging bonsai in a competitive setting, beauty can mean something different for every person. So rather than trying to please everyone, the best approach is to try to please the judges, at least if you want to win. And the way you do that is by learning what qualities judges tend to look for in a great bonsai. The first and most important thing that judges tend to look for is balance. This applies to all bonsai, regardless of style. Balance is usually pretty easy to spot. Just take a look at this tree. Is it balanced? Obviously not. There's way too much weight on the left side compared to the right. Now here's another tree. Is it balanced? Yes, both of these trees have roughly equal visual weight, and that's what balance is all about. Balance is important because it brings a sense of stability to the tree. If a tree looks like it's top-heavy or unstable, it just doesn't look good. Now, you might be thinking, well, that's easy. How hard is it to make a balanced bonsai? The truth is, it can actually be very difficult to achieve perfect balance, especially when you start adding foliage. Just think of it. All those little leaves need to be arranged one by one. It's no wonder that balance is often cited as one of the most important elements of bonsai. In fact, in most competitions, a tree will be disqualified for being unbalanced. So if a tree is not balanced, it doesn't even get a chance to win. Another quality that judges tend to look for is depth. Depth is a bit harder to explain, but essentially it has to do with the appearance of the tree's roots, branches, and trunk. Let me show you what I mean. Take a look at these two trees. Both of them seem relatively shallow, right? I mean, there's not a lot going on with either of their root systems. Now take a look at these two trees. Do they look deeper? Well, they appear to have thicker trunks and more substantial root systems. This gives them more depth. Depth is important because it gives the tree a sense of age and realism. If a tree looks like it's been growing for a long time, then it's going to appear more mature. And if it appears more mature, then it looks older. And generally speaking, judges prefer older-looking trees because in nature, older trees are usually bigger and more impressive. Of course, with bonsai, we're trying to mimic the appearance of older trees while keeping the trees small. So achieving this balance is very challenging. Realism is another quality that judges tend to look for. And like depth, it has to do with the overall appearance of the tree. Take a look at these two trees. One of them looks like a bonsai, but the other one looks more like a houseplant. That's because the first tree has characteristics that we typically associate with bonsai. Things like gnarly branches, a taper in the trunk, and a general sense of age. The second tree looks like it's well cared for, but it lacks the characteristics that make it look like a bonsai. Realism is important because it makes the tree more believable. If a tree looks too perfect or too manicured, it looks fake. And nobody wants to buy a fake tree. Finally, integrity is another quality that judges tend to look for. Integrity refers to the overall structure of the tree. Does the tree have a strong central leader? Are the branches well attached? Is the trunk free of defects? Basically, does the tree look like it could exist in nature? If a tree has good integrity, it looks like it could be a real tree. If it lacks integrity, it looks like it's falling apart. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes you want your tree to look like it's falling apart, but usually you want your tree to have good integrity. Integrity is important because it gives the tree a sense of permanence. If a tree looks like it's going to fall apart, then it doesn't look very stable. Nobody wants to buy a tree that's going to fall apart. Now, of course, these four qualities are not the only things that judges look for in a great bonsai. In fact, I'm sure that there are many other qualities that I haven't even mentioned yet, but these four are some of the most important. So keep them in mind the next time you're looking at a bonsai. Now let's take a look at the winning trees from last year's U.S. National Bonsai and Penjing Championships and see how they embody these four qualities. The first place winner in the amateur division was this Chinese elm. At first glance, it doesn't seem like an especially impressive tree, does it? In fact, it seems like it's missing something. That's because it's not very wide. When you compare it to this tree, for example, it just looks narrow. Also, this tree is not very tall. When you compare it to this one, it just looks short. And finally, this tree is not very old. When you compare it to this one, it just looks young. So what makes this tree special? Well, if you take a closer look, you'll see that it has a couple of things going for it. First of all, it's very well balanced. There's a nice balance between the size and shape of the tree's trunk and the branches. Secondly, the tree has good integrity. All the branches are well attached to the trunk, and the trunk itself looks like it could support the branches. Finally, the tree has a certain charm to it. Although it's not the biggest or oldest tree in the world, it has a certain youthful exuberance that's appealing. Even though this tree isn't especially large, old, or developed, it still has a lot of potential, particularly in the trunk and nabari, and that's why the judges gave it first place. The second place winner in the amateur division was this Chinese larch. Now this tree is much larger than the previous one, but it too has a couple of things going for it. First of all, it's very well balanced. The tree's trunk and branches are all in proportion to each other. Secondly, the tree has good depth. The trunk and branches are thick and substantial looking. And finally, the tree has a certain majesty to it. It's just a really impressive looking tree. Even though this tree is much larger than the previous one, it too has a lot of potential, particularly in the trunk and nabari. And that's why the judges gave it second place. The third place winner in the amateur division was this Japanese maple. Again, this tree has a few things going for it. First of all, it's very well balanced. The tree's trunk and branches are all in proportion to each other. Secondly, the tree has good depth. The trunk and branches are thick and substantial looking. And finally, the tree has a certain elegance to it. It's just a really classy looking tree. Even though this tree is much larger than the previous one, it too has a lot of potential, particularly in the trunk and nabari. And that's why the judges gave it third place. If you think your bonsai could use a boost, then check out the link below.